Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Welcome to the Environment Committee. Government members on this side, National Enact on that side. Welcome, Lawrence. We have read your evidence, so assume that. We have 15 minutes in total, so if you would like to speak to it and then allow generous time for questions because members like that interaction. And if you don't want to introduce yourself and Jamie, and the acoustics in here are not great, so if you could speak into the microphones, that really helps. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Eugenie. Does that
yeah,
work?
Good. Yep.
Okay, well, just thank you all for seeing us today because we certainly do really appreciate the opportunity. I'd just like to introduce Jamie McFadden, who obviously Eugenie knows, who's on our board as well. And while this petition's under my name, Lawrence Patterson, in actual fact, it is the petition of Groundswell New Zealand. And we are committed environmentalists and are not simply against regulation. For instance, regulation is necessary for things such as effluent ponds and water takes. And we're not suggesting halting addressing environmental issues, it's just that there are better solutions than what is being legislated. So unfortunately, Bryce McKenzie, the other member of, I guess you could possibly say the top of Groundswell New Zealand, unfortunately can't be here today. Because he did have his COVID shot and now has shingles. So he's going nowhere, but he is actually he's a founding member of the Pomahaka Water Care Catchment Group. And I have a QE2 Covenant of Native Bush block on my farm. And Jamie runs Huanui Natives, which is the largest restoration business in Canterbury. So while we started out with fresh water, where we see multiple failings, others have come to our attention. That is significant natural areas, Indigenous biodiversity, and the new Pastoral and Built Environment Act. We are also deeply concerned about the mental state of farmers as this avalanche of impossible new rules descends on them, and also the massive bureaucracy costs that are looming for farming. So we see catchment groups and the QE2 approach to conservation. We know that works. And when you do that, it gives people buy-in and pride and change that cannot be attained by legislation. So exactly the same on the catchment group as it is with our block of land that we put into the QE2 trust. And by the way, congratulations, I guess you guys perhaps had something to do with the fact that there has been more money put into the QE2 trust. Well done. And we just think that that's a psychological thing. If you do it, you'll take pride in it and make it work. And if someone comes along and says you must do that, it's got not such a good effect or even the opposite effect. So I'll just hand over to Jamie. He's got a few points and then we're willing to take questions.
Hello, Jamie.
So I'm chairman of Rural Advocacy Network. We're a group that established in Canterbury 4 years ago and represent farmers and rural communities on a wide range of issues. And our group have joined up with Groundswell, which started in Southland Otago, and that's how I've become involved with Groundswell. So I'm one of the Groundswell spokespeople. In my day job, I work with farmers. My wife and I have got, it's not the largest, it's one of the largest restoration businesses in Canterbury. So we've had that for the last 20 years. We've got a native plant, EcoSource native plant nursery business. We do a lot of wetland restoration, help farmers protect native bush. We do a lot of erosion control. We run one of the biggest private erosion control programs in the country, doing poplar and willow pole plantings. So we work with farmers all the time. And I guess my key message is, and what we've found with Groundswell, that as we've got going, we've found a lot more issues other than just the sowing dates and the winter grazing issues. And what I'm finding from our point of view, and certainly Groundswell, is that the whole regulatory system, environmental regulatory system, is collapsing. It's unworkable in so many aspects, and it's having a massive impact on a lot of farmers, and it's leading to to perverse outcomes. So farmers that are doing a lot to look after the environment are getting penalised more. And I guess that's a key message that we're bringing today, is that the whole environmental legislative system is failing us. And we would like to see a much wider ranging review than what has been done, and particularly looking at it from a grassroots level in terms of the impact on people, impact on communities, and actually trying to get better environmental outcomes. I guess I'd probably just leave it at that.
Thank you both, and congratulations for all of the work that's been done with the Pomahaka Water Care Group that you've itemised in your evidence. Stuart Smith.
Yeah, hi Jamie. Good to see you again. Have you mentioned just now that farmers doing more to protect the environment are the ones that are being punished more or affected more? Can you just expand on that and tell us how that is the case?
So how that is working is that the more native bush that you've got on your properties, the more wetlands that you've got on your properties, the more that you have areas mapped on your land. And so last couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a couple of farmers from the West Coast. Most of their farm has been mapped as a wetland, and the local real estate agents were saying they may as well give their property away because no one wants to buy it because it's been zoned as a wetland. So that's one of the areas. The other aspect is that when you have these areas on your land, and we've got them on our farm, my parents have left a lot of native bush and a lot of wetlands on our farm. And the more of these areas that you have on your farm, the more, bureaucratic interference you have. You're having to deal with people coming in to do surveys, people coming in to do monitoring. And it's just, and then you've got the regulations, and the rules are always changing. So it's a whole lot of things impacting those people that have got natural areas left on their land. And it comes across as a penalising approach rather than a supportive approach, whereas the QE2 Trust is the complete opposite. It comes across as a supportive approach and actually helps you actively manage these areas. Yeah.
Thank you. Got Dr. Liz Craig and then Scott Simpson.
Welcome, and thank you for the work that you've been doing for the environment. Just based in Southland, and I'm pretty aware that for pretty much all of our major waterways and tributaries, we've got a whole patchwork of catchment groups. It's a really strong network. What's the extent to which that's covered across the rest of the country?
In terms of catchment groups, there's actually also a lot of land care groups, and if you look in our district, the extent is massive. We did a summary of what's happening in our region, and within our region, we've got land care groups, catchment groups, we've got biodiversity trusts. So I'm a founding trustee of the Huranui Biodiversity Trust, and these are all landowner farmer type initiatives. We've got irrigation collectives, and we worked with a couple of the irrigation collectives in North Canterbury on a lot of environmental stuff. So there's a huge range of network of groups spreading throughout the country. There's also land care trust organised groups as well. It'd be interesting actually to do a bit of a snapshot of what exists today in terms of all those different groups doing work on the ground in the environmental space.
Most difference, North Island, South Island, for sense?
I'm not sure on the answer. I know there's a lot of groups in the North Island, Waikato. There's groups right throughout the country. Northland, yes, there's groups right throughout the country. Yeah.
Certainly, Liz, and good to see you. Like Southland, it's pretty well all covered with catchment groups, isn't it? The whole place. And I think one of the things is for farmers, there's been a huge interest, if you like, in what's happening in waterways and things like that. And like 5 years ago when I was shifting stock, that's what you did. You just went out and shifted stock. But now I don't cross, and our property's probably got 6 major creeks that come down it and a small river. And I wouldn't cross any of those now without having looked to see what the water quality is, what the water looks like. And that's just the buy-in, I think, that farmers have got, to actually look at what they're doing instead of just carrying on farming. So in that respect, the heightened awareness, I think, is working. It's good.
Thank you. Honourable Scott Simpson.
Yeah, thanks very much. Really useful presentation. And that point that you've just made about how farming practical practice has changed in our lifetimes, let alone the lifetimes of, say, for instance, the way my grandfather used to farm on the Coromandel, literally with a box of matches. So that wouldn't occur today, and nor would we expect it to do. But I'm interested primarily in the comment that Jamie made, which was about how this sort of tsunami of red tape and administrative protocol and rules and regulations is actually on the ground having a perverse outcome of turning off good practice that actually farmers want to pursue. But because they're faced with this sort of wall of bureaucracy, actually the opposite is occurring of what was intended by the wall of bureaucracy. I just wondered if you could sort of expand a little bit on that, please.
Yeah, that's a massive subject, and we do see it on the ground in all the work we do. I guess I could give one example. So, with the climate change policies, there's a push to plant pine trees, and there's been a shift away from planting productive land. The encouragement is to plant marginal land. And a lot of our marginal land in Canterbury and indeed the East Coast up here is covered in native shrublands. And what we're seeing now is extensive areas of native shrublands being overplanted in pines. And this is just one example. These native shrublands are quite unique in New Zealand. They're special in the world. And it's these sorts of policies that are delivering those sort of outcomes. One of the biggest changes we're noticing is that your traditional farming families, those that have got a strong environmental ethos, are getting out of farming and they just cannot cope. And they haven't got the resourcing like corporates do or large organisations. And we're starting to lose those people. And that was quantified by Otago University research. And they had the same findings, was that these are the farmers that are struggling and we're losing them. And if that keeps going, what's the future for New Zealand looking like? Is it corporate ownership? Is it carbon forestry and overseas investors and the loss of those traditional farming families? Because that's where we're heading. Yeah.
Thank you. We have come to the end of time. Can I check that you did receive the evidence from the Ministry for the Environment in terms of rewriting the rules? Because, okay.
Yep.
So thank you. We've heard your concerns clearly. We'll consider those and then we'll write a report and then that will go back to Parliament and be provided to you. But thank you for coming to Wellington in person rather than just doing it by Zoom.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
So.